Welcome to the last video in this series of Mastering Your 2025 Marathon, with this whole series being geared towards beginner marathon runners or also those marathon runners who feel like they haven't really got the hang of the marathon distance and haven't executed it in the way that they would like to see for themselves. So we're going to be talking about race day execution, everything that goes into that in terms of pacing, fueling, hydration, as well as that mental prep work for those mental strategies that you're going to need when you're in that race and you're finding it really, really challenging, because it absolutely will be. So consider this your pre-race day strategy session, which I do these with all of my one-to-one athletes. I also offer 1-hour consults for people who want to focus on race day strategy, but they've been training on their own. So if you're interested in that, I will link that below. There's also a downloadable template that goes along with this video. So make sure you grab that so that you can spend time on your own going through every part of this and you feel fully prepared, because that's going to give you the confidence that you need to have a great race. All right, so first we're going to talk about pacing. Pacing the marathon is absolutely critical to you having a great day out there. When you get this wrong, it can really lead to a challenging race, and not just challenges, because we know we're going to have that, but just a slog at the end and really not a fun time. And pacing is really the number one reason why people hit the wall or just crash and burn. And so really pacing is so important to get right. So the first part, and what I'd really say is the most important part, is having a conservative start to your race. So you want to go into it going slower than you think you need to. And this is even more important for people who are newer to this distance. The more experienced you are, the more you have a better understanding of what your body can handle. But when this is your first marathon, you don't know what you don't know. And I'm also talking to those people who've run a marathon before, but have only ever bonked. This is the part where you really want to listen in, because this is probably why you're struggling the most. So go slower than you think that you need to. When you decide on what your ultimate marathon pace is, you should be starting slower by about 10 to 15 seconds per mile, or even slower, especially if this is your first one. I'm just gonna say, banking time is not a race strategy. No matter how many people tell you you should do this, no, you should not do this. It's going to make it way worse for you in the end. You're actually gonna lose a ton of time. Very likely you're going to end up walking no matter how fast of a runner you are. And that's not what you want. You wanna try to keep steady and in control the entire time, with the hope that you can go a little bit faster at the end, but most of all that you can maintain as close to your marathon pace as possible. Otherwise, why would you choose it as your marathon pace if you just know you're going to slow down and go slower at the end? So you want to bank energy. That's what you're thinking about here. I promise, when you bank energy, you will have energy later. This is the part that people really don't trust until they actually do it. So I'm urging you to trust that this does work. If you go slower in the beginning, you'll have more energy at the end. So I want you to be thinking about the marathon in these 3 parts. So the beginning miles, so we're going to say about the first 6 to 10 miles, or even up to 13 miles if you're newer at this. That's going to be that slower start. And we're going to say for this one, be smart. So think about being smart. You're making really wise pacing decisions, and you're avoiding going out too fast, getting caught up in the crowd and the excitement. You're going to have to rein yourself in. That can be difficult. The second part of this, be smooth. So this is the middle portion, miles 10 to 20, or about from the half marathon to mile 20. So we're not splitting this completely up into thirds. The first 2 sections are actually longer. So think about being smooth in the middle, finding that control, finding that marathon pace that was your goal all along. You want to find a comfortable and consistent groove in that space. And the third part of the marathon is really that last 10K, or about the last 6 to 8 miles. And this is where you want to be brave. You're really having to dig deep no matter what, searching for what you think is impossible, because there's more in you than you think that you have, but you're going to have to really be courageous going into this portion. It's going to be really challenging. It's going to be one of the toughest things you've ever done, if not the toughest physical act you've ever done. And so you just need to be ready for that mentally and physically, that you're going to have to find that next gear and give it all you've got to the finish line. So before we move on to nutrition, a couple other things you want to consider is, if you have a hilly race, you want to go by effort. So you're going to be going slower up the hills, faster on the downs, and you're wanting to be just paying attention to your effort all around, because there's other factors like weather that are going to change the course of your day. And so I really just encourage people to be flexible going in, knowing that you're going to have to make some decisions for yourself outside of maybe what your original plan was. I find that the people who are the most rigid in their pacing plan are the ones who get in the most trouble. The people who are more flexible and are really good at paying attention to the signals of their body, those are the people who have a much better day. So I have a whole other video about how effort should be your North Star. I really recommend that you check it out. It's really important, because as much as we want to focus on pace, have a pacing plan, which should really be taking into account your training, other races that you've done. I have a video on that. But at the end of the day, effort is your North Star, and you've got to be able to pay attention to that and adjust to it. Next part is your nutrition strategies. We had a whole video about fueling and nutrition, but when you're planning for race day, when we're racing, the general recommendation is that you're anywhere from like 50 to 90 grams of carbs per hour, depending on how fast you're racing, how long you're going to be out there, how small you are, how big you are. A lot of those things you have to take into account. But I like to tell people, at a very minimum, you shouldn't be having less than 50 grams of carbs per hour when you're racing the marathon. It's really crucial to your success in those last 6 to 8 miles. So that equates to about 2 gels per hour, or 1 gel every 30 minutes. I would much rather see you going 60 and up, closer to that 60 to 70 mark if you can. But of course, it also has to do with how you practice this. The most important part is that you are being consistent throughout. That's why I recommend doing every 30 minutes. The farther away you get from that, it's just harder and harder to get enough in. So staying consistent, finding that fuel that really works well for you, that you know you're going to be able to get down, that's going to make you feel your best, hopefully not give you any GI distress. Again, it's really important that you're practicing this in training so that your stomach is not wondering what the heck you're giving it on race day. And it's always good to have some sort of supplemental fuel. I like to use Tailwind on top of my gels that I'm taking. So I'm taking 1 every 30 minutes. And then I also have in a flask, I have Tailwind, which is upping the carbs and also upping those electrolytes too, that extra sodium, which we're going to talk about next. All right, so next is your hydration strategy. So this is going to include your water and electrolytes. And the more of a sweater you are, the salty of a sweater you are, the hotter it's going to be, the more you're going to have to really consider this and take into account that you have enough, or that you at least know where the aid stations are going to be that have the water that you're going to take in. So a lot of people initially think that you just need water, but electrolyte source is really important. It varies from person to person how much you need. So this is something really good to research in advance and practice with, so that you find what works best for you as a unique runner. But in most cases, it's a can't hurt situation. And so I would encourage you to have more on you just in case. Having salt stick chews are really helpful. Like I said, use Tailwind that has added sodium in it. I use gels. I like the Huma ones that have additional electrolytes. I'm just trying to find easier ways to get more in without having to take extra if I don't have to. But I personally like those salt stick tablets. They're more like a little pill, but there's lots of different ways that you can get these. I'll also pop in a Noon tablet into the Tailwind just to up them. And we want to have a good balance of water and electrolytes, not just taking in water, especially if it's a warmer day. This is going to be really crucial to your success. So make sure you're paying attention to it and putting that into your strategy of how you're going to go about this on race day. So my motto is usually sip little and often. Again, going back to the consistency piece that we talked about with fueling, you don't want to get to a point where you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't drank any water in a really long time and now I'm really thirsty. So having that sip little and often mindset makes sure that you're staying really level in terms of that hydration throughout the race. I like to carry a Nathan handheld that has water, and then I talked about the flask that I had that had its electrolytes, and I'm also stopping at some of the aid stations too. You might be someone who wants to stop at all the aid stations and not carry anything, or you're someone who feels comfortable carrying your hydration pack because you're new to this, and that's like a security blanket. You can absolutely do that as long as your course allows it. Usually it's just like the big major marathons that don't let you bring those vests. Otherwise, I think that's a great strategy. And a lot of people are very uncomfortable taking water from the cups for the very first time. It is a learned skill. And so sometimes it's nice to not have to worry about that. Last one I want to talk about is the mental strategy. So with my athletes, when I work with them for these race strategy calls, we talk a lot about the mental piece and just how they're going to navigate when something goes wrong that they don't expect. I cannot encourage you enough to spend time on this piece because it happens so often that people will check through everything that they think could go wrong, and then it's something completely different. It's kind of crazy how often this seems to happen. So really it's more about how are you going to be flexible in that moment? How are you going to control your attitude in that moment when a challenge arises that you're either not expecting or it's coming at a different time than you expected? You don't want to be in a situation where you're freaking out when this happens. You want to be able to stay in control, and that is about training your mind and really having an understanding of how you're going to be in that moment. Thinking, okay, I practiced this. Here is something happening in the moment. Here's what I'm going to do. It's not the end of the world. What do I need to do to get back on track and make this as big of a success as possible so that I can just look back on this moment and laugh later? Visualizing is a big piece of this. So you want to make sure you're visualizing yourself having a strong race. You want to be talking to yourself in a really positive way. I was just talking to my own kids about this, how important that self-talk is, and not saying, I'm terrible, I suck at this. That doesn't help anyone. Instead, saying, I'm strong, I'm brave, I'm so proud of myself. I did everything in training that I was supposed to. Here are the things that I did in training that are giving me confidence, that prove to myself that I can have a great day. Just really pay attention to how you're talking to yourself. Put sticky notes with positive affirmations if you need to. Whatever you need to do when you're on that downtime in your taper, you've got some more time. Working through those mantras that you're going to have, something that you're going to latch onto when the race gets really, really grueling and tough, where you can just have those mantras ready that are going to help build you back and get you out of that hard space so that you can dig deep and keep going when you want anything but to keep going. So because this mental piece is so important, I'm also including with that downloadable I said that I'm including here with some mental race day prompts that I would like you to go through. I think you'll find them to be really helpful. Just some like journaling techniques to do before, even if you want to just do it in your head, sit down, quiet, meditate over these questions. I know it's going to really help you on race day. Because if you don't believe you can do it and do it strong, then you won't. So you have to believe in yourself that this is possible and that you're going to have an amazing day out there. So that's it. These are the strategies that I really want you to take time paying attention to ahead of the race so that you're setting yourself up for having the best race you can possibly have. Going in and winging it, not taking the time to go through these is putting you in a situation where you're not going to have that day that you have worked for, that you deserve, or that you want. And so taking a little extra time ahead, that's putting you in a situation where you are getting on that start line knowing, okay, I'm super ready. I couldn't have done anything better or differently to be as prepared as possible. Let's go do this race and let's go crush it. I hope you have an incredible race. Thanks for joining me in this entire series. I'm actually going to put it together so that it is in all-in-one video so that it can be helpful for you to come back to if you need to, all in one place. I love getting to train athletes for their first marathon and beyond. I'm so excited for you to get out there and give it your all.